The first pontoon boat dropped onto the mud while I stood on its stern. The hull lurched, throwing me against the rail, and across Pine Ridge Marina, 23 slips hung crooked over a shoreline that had not existed 36 hours earlier. HOA President Denise Calder watched from the exposed lakebed with a construction plan beneath one arm. The board voted, "Move your boats or lose them." I did not argue. I photographed the water gauge, tilted pilings, and fresh mudline beneath every hull, then texted each director while my crew secured the heaviest boats. 40 minutes later, Board Secretary Eli Harper arrived, stared at the stranded marina, and said, "What vote?" She canceled the meeting. That was the first crack. The second appeared inside the spillway operator's log. Denise had ordered the outlet opened 3 days before the vote she claimed had authorized it. But the lowering was not about maintenance. Survey flags marked a future private beach across the exposed shoreline, and one stood inside the marina parcel described in my recorded deed. By noon, I knew this was no water-level mistake. Someone had used a meeting that never happened to reshape property they did not own. Power cables sagged between the dock pedestals. Aluminum gangways rested at angles their hinges had never been designed to hold. A 28-foot cabin cruiser leaned against two pilings with its propeller buried in gray clay. I assigned one employee to photograph each slip from the same 3 positions. Another wrote down hull numbers, water depth, and visible damage. I placed a yardstick beside the old water stain on the nearest piling and recorded a slow video from the stain down to the mud. The drop measured 39 inches. Denise walked toward the orange flags while 2 contractors nearby unloaded stakes and marking paint. The plan under her arm showed a crescent-shaped beach, a retaining wall, and a pedestrian path. She kept the page turned inward, but the title block was visible when the wind lifted one corner. Cedar Hollow Residence Beach, Phase 1. I asked the contractors for the name of the company that had hired them. They looked toward Denise before handing me a work card. She told them I had no authority beyond the dock edge. I wrote down the truck plate and stepped aside. If they crossed the line, the camera would show it clearly. Then I called Miles Trent, the spillway operator. He sounded exhausted. He confirmed that the outlet had been opened under a written work order and emailed me the first page after I requested that he preserve the entire log. Denise's signature appeared beneath the instruction, followed by a project code, not an emergency designation. Eli was still beside me when I compared that code with the beach plan. His face tightened. The same 6 characters appeared in both places. I looked past him toward the farthest orange flag. Marcus Bell's old survey cap was still visible in the ground, 18 feet behind it. Denise's proposed shoreline did not merely touch my marina. It crossed a monument that had marked my boundary for 12 years. If the board had never met, who had created the minutes Denise was already quoting, and how long before the lake dropped had this beach actually been planned? I stayed on the docks until the sun slid behind the empty boat ramps. By then, the exposed lakebed had turned from wet gray clay to a cracked brown shelf. My employees had placed temporary braces beneath the steepest gangways, disconnected the strained electrical lines, and tied warning tape across 9 slips that were no longer safe to enter. Pine Ridge Marina had been part of my life long before it became mine on paper. My parents opened its repair shed when I was 14, back when Cedar Hollow Lake was surrounded by fishing cabins instead of stone entrance monuments and matching mailboxes. I learned to rebuild outboard engines at the workbench behind the fuel counter. 12 years earlier, after my father's health failed, I bought the marina parcel from my parents and recorded the transfer under my own name. The commercial parcel predated the Cedar Hollow subdivision. It had never been annexed into the HOA, but its deed carried rights and obligations tied to the lake. The original developer had recorded a lake operations covenant before transferring the dam and spillway controls to the association. That covenant protected both sides. I could not expand the marina into the residential cove, and the HOA could not manipulate the water level as if the lake served only its homeowners. The protected operating elevation was 911.5 feet. A non-emergency drawdown below that mark required 10 days written notice to the marina and approval from at least 5 of the 7 directors at a properly noticed meeting. Denise had given me neither. The same covenant required the spillway operator to maintain a daily log showing the time, purpose, authorization, and measured change for every release. That provision explained why Miles's first page mattered so much. That evening, I opened the fireproof cabinet in my office and removed the deed, title policy, recorded plat, and covenant. The paper smelled faintly of the machine oil that had soaked into the old building over decades. The language was dry, but the restriction was not ambiguous. Emergency action was allowed only to address an immediate threat to the dam, public safety, or downstream property. Denise's beach project met none of those conditions. My inbox showed how quickly her decision was costing us. 18 weekend reservations had been canceled. A fishing guide moved 6 charters to another lake. 2 seasonal tenants demanded written confirmation that their hulls had not been damaged. The recovery company charged $6,800 to lift and reposition the cabin cruiser and a heavy steel houseboat before their shafts bent against the lake bed. I printed every cancellation, invoice, and customer message. Anger would not straighten a piling or prove a claim. Numbers might. At 7:18 the next morning, a courier delivered a notice signed by Denise. It described the drawdown as temporary emergency maintenance and ordered me to remove all boats, gangways, and other privately installed objects from the exposed shoreline within 24 hours. It also warned that anything left behind could be removed at my expense. The wording bothered me almost as much as the deadline. My docks were not objects abandoned on HOA land. Their pilings stood within the marina parcel shown on the recorded plat, and the covenant expressly recognized the existing commercial slips. Denise was attempting to turn the water's retreat into a new property line. I called Marcus Bell, the surveyor who had verified the boundary when I purchased the marina. He remembered the capped monument near the outer slips and agreed to return with his field crew. I also sent him photographs of Denise's orange flags and the beach plan title block. Before noon, Eli Harper came into my office carrying a folder of board notices. As secretary, he had prepared a special meeting for the previous Thursday after Denise requested authority for shoreline maintenance. 2 directors could not attend. A third had asked for engineering documents Denise never supplied. Without enough directors to establish a quorum, Eli canceled the meeting. He placed a printed email on my desk. The timestamp showed 6:12 p.m., the night before Miles received the instruction to open the outlet. The subject line read, "Special meeting canceled, no board action." Denise had acknowledged the message 9 minutes later. There had been no approved emergency, no valid meeting, and no vote. Yet the notice in my hand quoted a board resolution by number. Somewhere between Eli's cancellation email and the falling lake, someone had created an official decision out of nothing. Marcus Bell arrived just after sunrise with 2 field technicians, a robotic total station, and a copy of the plat he had certified 12 years earlier. The lake was still dropping, although more slowly. Denise's orange flags now formed a curve across the exposed ground, tracing the shape of the beach shown on her plan. Marcus began at the capped monument near the outer slips. He checked it against a second iron pin beside the repair shed and a third monument uphill near the access road. Those points matched the recorded plat within normal survey tolerance. The problem was not where my boundary lay. The problem was where Denise had placed hers. Her farthest beach flag stood 18 feet inside the marina parcel. The proposed retaining wall crossed the same line for nearly 70 feet before turning toward the residential cove. Marcus photographed every flag, recorded its coordinates, and installed temporary witness stakes several feet away so the location could be reconstructed if anyone disturbed the originals. "Water moving away doesn't move a deed line," he said. By mid-morning, Dr. Lena Ortiz joined us. She was a hydrologist who had inspected private reservoirs and dam control systems for more than 20 years. I had hired her after sending photographs of the tilted docks and Miles's first log page. She measured the water elevation, examined the exposed pilings, and downloaded data from the marina's automatic gauge. The lake had fallen 3.25 feet in 36 hours. Lena found no rainfall event, downstream flood threat, or sudden pressure change that would have required an emergency release. More important, the operator's log showed a controlled outlet setting that matched a planned drawdown, not a rapid response to danger. The lake had been lowered at a steady rate chosen in advance. She also found damage that was easy to miss from shore. Several floating docks had settled unevenly onto submerged rocks. 2 anchoring cables had pulled against their brackets, and 1 row of pilings had shifted toward the open channel. Raising the water without an engineered sequence could twist the docks again. Denise had created a problem that could not safely be reversed by simply closing a gate. While Marcus and Lena worked, I visited the county recorder's office. The archive developer plat showed Pine Ridge Marina as a separate commercial parcel. The lake operations covenant appeared in both chains of title, mine and the HOA's. A later transfer document conveyed the dam control equipment to Cedar Hollow HOA, but expressly stated that the transfer remained subject to the covenant. There was no document granting the association ownership of my shoreline or authority to erase the protected operating elevation. The index showed no later covenant amendment, no shoreline deed to the HOA, and no easement permitting a beach across the marina parcel. I scanned certified copies and sent them to Rachel Voss, a property attorney recommended by Marcus. Rachel called before I reached the marina. Do not debate them anymore. Preserve everything. She asked for the original notice, reservation losses, recovery invoice, security footage, Eli's cancellation email, and every page Miles could lawfully provide from the operator's log. She also requested the HOA bylaws and the resolution number quoted by Denise. Eli supplied the bylaws. 5 directors were required for a quorum, and board action had to occur at a meeting unless all 7 directors signed a written consent. The canceled meeting had neither. Only 3 directors had replied to a later email from Denise, and 1 response merely asked for more information. The HOA eventually sent Rachel a 4-page PDF labeled Resolution 24-17. The first page claimed the board had approved an emergency shoreline project on Monday. The attached minutes listed no start time, no attendance roll, and no recorded motions. Eli's name appeared in a typed certification block, but the signature line beneath it was blank. Miles then released the remaining authorized operational records. His work order carried Friday's timestamp, 3 days before the resolution date, and used the same 6-character project code printed on the private beach plan. It instructed him to lower the lake to 908.25 feet and hold it there until grading was complete. Nothing on the form mentioned an emergency inspection. By 5 o'clock, Rachel had assembled the sequence. The Thursday meeting was canceled. Denise ordered the outlet opened Friday. The water began falling, and a resolution dated Monday appeared afterward to justify work already underway. Rachel sent a formal preservation and cease and desist letter to Denise, the HOA's attorney, the spillway operator, and the grading contractor. It demanded that the outlet release stop, that no one alter the exposed lakebed, and that every communication and document connected to Resolution 24-17 be retained. The HOA's response arrived 90 minutes later. It rejected the demand, asserted exclusive shoreline authority, and announced that grading would begin at 8 the next morning. When I walked outside, fresh blue paint already crossed Marcus's witness stakes. It marked the outer edge of the grading zone. Whoever had laid it down had received the cease and desist letter and answered by widening the project into my parcel. At 7:42 the next morning, 2 compact track loaders and an excavator rolled down the HOA access road. The same white utility truck followed them. I recognized the contractor's name from the work card, Lakeside Earthworks. Its project manager, Gavin Price, stepped out with a laminated site plan and began directing his crew toward the exposed shoreline. I stayed on my side of Marcus's capped monument and recorded continuously. Rachel had been precise about that. I could identify the boundary, hand Gavin the survey notice, and object to entry. I could not place an employee in front of moving equipment or create a confrontation that Denise could describe as dangerous interference. Gavin accepted the notice and compared Marcus's coordinates with the plan Denise had supplied. His expression changed when he realized the 2 lines were 18 feet apart. Mrs. Calder told us the HOA controlled everything below the old waterline. I pointed to the recording information printed on Marcus's survey and told him the ownership question was now in council's hands. Gavin called someone from his truck. 10 minutes later, Denise arrived and directed him to continue inside the blue paint. He refused to cross Marcus's monument without written confirmation from his company's attorney, but his crew began stripping brush and loose soil from the portion claimed by the HOA. Even that work carried consequences. The excavator disturbed wet sediment less than 40 feet from my fuel dock. Fine brown clouds washed toward the remaining channel each time groundwater seeped into a new trench. Lena photographed the flow and collected samples, not to claim contamination before testing, but to document the condition before it changed. By lunchtime, Cedar Hollow residents received an association-wide email titled Marina Owner Blocks Necessary Lake Improvements. It claimed the project would stabilize the shore, improve safety, and restore underused common property. It did not mention the private beach rendering, the canceled meeting, or the recorded covenant. Residents were told that delays could increase everyone's annual assessment. The message worked. My office received 14 calls in 2 hours. Some residents asked reasonable questions. Others accused me of holding the lake hostage for money. One customer canceled a seasonal slip because he did not want his boat tied to a lawsuit. I logged each call, saved every voicemail, and kept the marina's public response to one sentence. Pine Ridge Marina was seeking compliance with recorded property and lake operation agreements. The physical losses also grew. A second anchoring bracket tore loose as the mud beneath the dock dried and shifted. We shut down the fuel pumps because the supply line had lost support near the water's edge. Without fuel sales or safe launches, the marina was functioning as a storage yard for boats we could not move. That afternoon, HOA Treasurer Paula Monroe called me from a private number. She was one of the directors who had not attended the canceled meeting. Denise had told the board that emergency work would cost no more than $18,000. Paula had since found a $96,000 lakeside earthworks proposal in the association's financial portal. It covered a sand beach, retaining wall, path lighting, and landscaping. A $28,800 deposit had been authorized the Wednesday before the canceled meeting. Paula sent the proposal and the portal's activity report directly to Rachel. The report showed that Denise uploaded a replacement version of Resolution 2417 24 minutes after receiving the preservation letter. The original PDF had contained Eli's blank certification line. The replacement displayed his typed name beneath the words "duly certified," even though Eli had never signed or approved it. Rachel compared the two files. The resolution number and claimed Monday approval remained identical, but the second file's metadata showed it had been created that evening. Someone was not merely defending a questionable vote. They were improving the paper trail after being told to preserve it. Denise escalated before the day ended. She delivered a second notice accusing the marina of interfering with authorized dam operations and demanding reimbursement for contractor standby time. Because my parcel was outside the association, the HOA could not impose ordinary member fines on me. Instead, the notice threatened to record a claim against the marina for project delays. Rachel treated that threat seriously, without accepting that it was valid. A recorded claim, even a weak one, could complicate financing and frighten customers. She added the notice to the growing evidence file and asked Lena for an immediate declaration explaining why further drawdown or uncontrolled refilling could increase the damage. Lena completed it that night. Marcus finalized his certified survey, marking the 18-foot encroachment and the 70-foot overlap. Eli signed a declaration confirming that he canceled the meeting, took no minutes, certified no resolution, and never authorized Denise to use his name. At 6:10 the next morning, Rachel filed a verified civil complaint seeking declaratory relief, protection of the marina boundary, damages, preservation of the disputed lakebed, and emergency restrictions on further water release or grading. She attached the covenant, both resolution files, the activity log, operator records, survey, engineering declaration, and contractor proposal. The judge had not yet ruled when Gavin called me. Denise had ordered Lakeside Earthworks to return with a larger excavator at noon. The larger excavator reached the HOA entrance at 11:26. It never reached the shoreline. 8 minutes later, Rachel called to say the judge had issued a temporary preservation order. The order prohibited additional grading, further water release, movement of survey markers, and removal of marina structures until an evidentiary hearing could be held. It did not decide who owned the disputed strip. It simply prevented either side from changing the evidence or worsening the damage while the court reviewed the case. A process server delivered copies to Denise and Gavin. Lakeside Earthworks parked its machinery above the old waterline and suspended the project. Denise remained beside the truck, reading the same page twice, then left without speaking to me. Closing the outlet required more care than stopping the excavator. Lena warned that snapping the gate shut could change pressure below the dam and refill the marina faster than the damaged docks could rise. Under the court order, she prepared a staged operating plan with Miles. They reduced the release in measured increments while my crew loosened anchoring cables and installed temporary rollers beneath 2 grounded docks. For the first time in 4 days, the gauge stopped falling. It held at 908.22 feet, slightly below the work order's target. We documented it. The HOA filed its response 3 days later. It denied that Resolution 24-17 had been fabricated and argued that Denise possessed emergency authority as president. It also claimed that ownership of the dam gave the association broad discretion over every shoreline exposed by a drawdown. Rachel requested expedited discovery before the hearing. The judge allowed a limited exchange focused on the vote, the outlet instruction, the property boundary, the claimed emergency, and the 2 versions of the resolution. The native files arrived with gaps. Denise produced screenshots of several emails instead of the original messages. The HOA supplied a PDF of the beach proposal, but omitted the financial portal history Paula had already preserved. Rachel documented each omission and requested the original electronic records, including metadata and attachment histories. When those records were produced, the sequence tightened. Denise had contacted Lakeside Earthworks 6 weeks before the drawdown. She sent Gavin a sketch showing the retaining wall across the marina boundary and asked whether lowering the lake would reduce construction costs. Gavin answered that dry access could save nearly $14,000. Denise then created the 6-character project code later used on the beach plan and spillway order. The bank records showed that the $28,800 deposit came from the HOA reserve account. Denise and 1 other director had approved the transfer electronically. The bylaws required 2 signatures to release funds, so the bank processed it. But satisfying the bank's signature rule did not supply the missing board authorization for the underlying project. Paula demanded a special board session after reviewing the records. 5 directors attended, establishing a quorum after the dispute began. Denise insisted that formal approval could be granted retroactively. 3 directors refused. The board voted to retain independent counsel to advise the association apart from Denise and to suspend all spending on the beach project. Gavin's deposition came first. He testified that Lakeside Earthworks had never been hired for dam repair or shoreline stabilization. Its proposal covered construction of the residence beach, shown in Denise's rendering. He also confirmed that Denise personally directed the grading line and told him the HOA owned all land below the historic waterline. When Rachel showed him Marcus's survey, Gavin acknowledged that Denise had never provided it to his company. Miles testified next. He explained that he did not determine property rights or board authority. He operated the outlet under written instructions from the entity responsible for the dam. Denise's work order appeared regular on its face, so he followed it, but she never described a structural emergency, and she never asked him to inspect the dam before opening the gate. His daily log recorded a planned descent to 908.20.25 feet, exactly as the work order required. Eli's testimony was shorter. He authenticated the cancellation email, denied certifying either version of Resolution 2417, and identified the formatting differences between genuine board minutes and Denise's document. Real minutes carried attendance, motions, vote totals, and his electronic certificate. The disputed version carried none of those things until Eli's typed name appeared after Rachel's preservation letter. Denise's deposition lasted nearly 5 hours. She admitted that no meeting occurred on the Monday listed in the resolution. She described the 3 email responses as an informal vote and argued that the remaining directors' silence amounted to consent. Rachel placed the bylaws in front of her, They required affirmative signatures from all 7 directors for action without a meeting. Denise then changed ground. She claimed the vote did not matter because the dam transfer gave her inherent authority to adjust the lake. Rachel asked her to identify language overriding the operating covenant. Denise could not point to any. Her attorney objected and reserved the shoreline authority argument for court. By the end of discovery, our case no longer depended on any single page. The survey fixed the boundary. The covenant limited non-emergency drawdowns. The operator's log established timing. The contractor proposal established purpose. The emails established advance planning. The metadata established when the replacement resolution appeared. 4 independent witnesses established that no valid vote occurred. The evening before the hearing, the HOA's independent counsel offered to keep the outlet closed and abandon construction while the parties negotiated damages. Denise's defense counsel rejected any order recognizing my shoreline boundary. They would argue that water control carried control of the exposed land with it. Rachel closed the evidence binders and looked at me across her conference table. Tomorrow, they have to choose which story they want the judge to believe. The hearing opened in a courtroom small enough that I could see the colored tabs on Denise's evidence binder from our table. Before testimony began, the parties agreed that the judge could decide liability, boundary rights, and permanent injunctive relief on the existing record. The amount of damages would be addressed after the ruling through verified invoices and financial records. The HOA's position had narrowed. Its independent attorney conceded that no properly noticed Monday meeting occurred, but argued that the board later ratified Denise's actions by defending the lawsuit. He also argued that ownership of the dam carried an implied right to lower the lake when the association believed maintenance or community safety required it. Denise's attorney went further. He described the beach as a secondary improvement added to a necessary shoreline project and suggested that the boundary followed the retreating water. If that were true, every foot of exposed lakebed would have shifted into HOA control as the outlet opened. Rachel began with the documents that existed before the dispute. She placed my deed, the original developer plat, the lake operations covenant, and the later dam transfer instrument into evidence through certified recorder copies. The covenant bound both parcels. The transfer gave the HOA physical control of the spillway, but expressly preserved the operating restrictions and existing marina rights. Marcus testified next. He explained that my boundary was defined by fixed monuments and measured courses, not by the water's location on any particular morning. His field crew had recovered all 3 controlling monuments. Denise's beach flags crossed 18 feet into my parcel, and the proposed retaining wall overlapped the boundary for nearly 70 feet. On cross-examination, Denise's attorney showed him photographs of older shorelines at different lake levels. Marcus agreed that the visible edge of water changed constantly. Then he explained why that fact hurt their argument. The developer had anticipated those changes and used fixed surveyed lines so ownership would not expand and contract with rain, drought, or operation of the spillway. Lena connected the physical damage to the outlet records. Her gauge data documented a 3.25-foot decline in 36 hours. The steady release pattern matched the written target of 908.25 feet. Nothing in the dam logs, weather records, inspections, or downstream measurements showed an emergency. She also explained why restoration had to be staged. Pilings had shifted, cables had tightened, and grounded docks needed room to rise without twisting. The judge asked whether the HOA could ever lower the lake. Lena said the engineering question depended on actual conditions. Rachel added that the covenant already answered the authorization question. Emergency action remained available for genuine threats, while planned non-emergency drawdowns required notice and a valid board decision. The timing evidence came next. Eli authenticated his cancellation email and testified that Resolution 24-17 had never been introduced, debated, or voted upon at a meeting. No quorum existed Thursday. No meeting occurred Monday. No unanimous written consent existed. He had not certified either version of the resolution. Gavin identified the $96,000 proposal and Denise's early construction sketch. The project had always been a private residence beach with a retaining wall, lighting, and landscaping. Its $28,800 deposit was approved before the canceled meeting. Dry access was expected to save $14,000, which explained the planned drawdown more convincingly than Denise's later references to safety. Miles supplied the operational link. He received Denise's signed work order Friday and opened the outlet because it appeared to come from the party responsible for the dam. The order carried the beach project code and specified the target elevation. It required no inspection, named no hazard, and predated the alleged Monday resolution by 3 days. Rachel finished with the electronic history. The first resolution file contained a blank certification line. 24 minutes after the preservation letter arrived, Denise uploaded a replacement displaying Eli's typed name beneath "duly certified." The portal recorded the creator, upload time, and replacement event. The court did not have to speculate about which file came first. Denise testified last. She said she believed quick action was necessary because residents had complained about the shoreline. Rachel asked for the engineering report supporting that belief. There was none. She asked why the beach contractor had been hired 6 weeks earlier. Denise said planning ahead was responsible management. Rachel then asked why the work order was signed before the resolution that supposedly authorized it. Denise answered that the board would have approved the project if everyone had attended. That is not the same as a vote, the judge said. The ruling came after a short recess. The judge found that Resolution 2417 was unauthorized and could not be retroactively converted into valid approval after the damage occurred. The 2 bank signatures permitted the financial institution to process the deposit, but they did not replace the quorum and voting requirements in the bylaws. The court also rejected the shoreline theory. The deed and survey fixed my boundary independently of the temporary waterline. Control of the dam did not convey ownership of the marina parcel, and the dam transfer instrument remained subject to the recorded covenant. The permanent injunction prohibited the HOA from grading, building, placing fill, or directing contractors inside the surveyed marina boundary. It required the private beach plan to be abandoned and the blue markings and unauthorized flags removed. Future non-emergency drawdowns below 911.5 feet would require the covenant's 10-day notice, valid board authorization, and a written operating plan. For 24 months, a neutral reservoir engineer would review qualifying releases and retain the operational logs. The order also required the HOA to withdraw its threatened project delay claim and notify residents that Pine Ridge Marina had not caused the closure. It did not punish ordinary homeowners for Denise's conduct. It confined relief to restoring the property, correcting the records, and paying only losses the evidence could directly prove. Restoration would proceed under Lena's staged plan. The outlet would remain restricted, while inflow returned the lake gradually, and repairs would be coordinated so grounded docks could rise without further structural damage. The damages record was completed over the following weeks. The verified amounts included $47,600 for dock, anchoring, and fuel line repairs, $6,800 for emergency lifting and towing, $24,350 in documented lost reservations, charters, and fuel sales, $18,000 for surveying and hydrological work, and $32,000 in recoverable legal fees under the covenant's prevailing party provision. The total was $128,750. When the final order was entered, Denise no longer controlled the story through notices or altered files. The operator's log, survey monuments, covenant, financial records, witnesses, and metadata all pointed in the same direction. 3 weeks later, I stood beside the gauge as the lake reached 910.8 feet. Behind me, the first repaired dock lifted cleanly from the mud. The dock did not rise all at once. For 6 more days, Lena and the neutral reservoir engineer adjusted the outlet in small increments, while my crew watched the pilings, cables, and hinges. We marked the gauge every morning. At 9,115 feet, the lake returned to the protected operating band, and the last grounded section floated without pulling another bracket loose. Repairing Pine Ridge Marina took most of the next month. We replaced the damaged anchoring hardware, realigned the outer dock, supported the fuel line, and rebuilt 2 gangway hinges. Marcus returned after the water settled and verified that every permanent structure remained inside the boundary established by his survey. Across the cove, Lakeside Earthworks removed its temporary paint and pulled the unauthorized flags. The beach rendering disappeared from the HOA website. No retaining wall, lighting trench, or pedestrian path was built on the exposed shoreline. Grass and natural vegetation were allowed to recover under Lena's stabilization recommendations. The court-ordered payment arrived after the final accounting was approved. It covered the repairs and documented losses, but it could not restore the weeks I spent wondering whether the business my parents started would survive. That part returned more slowly, one customer at a time. The fishing guide brought his charters back first. Seasonal tenants followed after I sent them the inspection reports. When the fuel system passed testing, I reopened the pumps and removed the warning tape from the final row of slips. By the second full weekend, engines were moving through the channel again. Cedar Hollow HOA held an open meeting after residents received the correction required by the court. Paula presented the project invoices, portal history, and actual vote requirements. Eli explained why board minutes could not exist without a meeting. Denise did not argue with either of them. She resigned before the meeting ended. Eli supervised a special election rather than accepting the presidency himself. The new board adopted a written approval checklist for contracts, reserve spending, and lake operations. At the dam control station, every release now required a retained work order, recorded authorization, and an entry available for independent review. The neutral engineer would remain involved for 2 years, exactly as the injunction required. I kept one orange survey flag in the bottom drawer of my desk, not as a trophy but as a reminder of how easily temporary markings can begin to look permanent when nobody asks what record supports them. The business was smaller than the lake, but it was ours. On the morning Pine Ridge Marina fully reopened, I stood beside the same pontoon that had dropped onto the mud. Its hull had been inspected, its propeller cleared, and its slip repaired. I released the bow line while its owner eased the throttle forward. The boat moved cleanly between the pilings and out toward open water. Behind it, the wake reached the water gauge and broke across the 911.5-foot mark. The lake looked ordinary again. That was the outcome I had wanted from the beginning. Not control of someone else's property, not revenge, and not a larger claim than my deed allowed. I wanted the line honored, the water managed by the rules, and my marina left where the records had always placed it.